Welcome to the Oh Brother podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, is my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith. And we are coming to you today with our top 5 all-time films.
Top 5.
Which was not an easy undertaking, I'm telling you right now.
This was extremely difficult for me.
I agree. I think, this isn't certainly not going to be a competition. This is a judgment-free zone. But I was literally changing my mind within the last couple of hours.
Me too. And I would plug one in and then I'd pull it out. And it was amazing to see, to try to, morph it down to 5.
Right.
Was incredibly tough.
Very, very tough.
Curious to see what you will have. Curious to see what I'll have.
Because you're still in the process of editing it.
I might throw something up that's different. No, I came up with the 5, and I think it's pretty solid. I'm curious if we'll match. On a couple, I think we might, but who knows?
Yeah, and I got to tell you, so I'm not sure how I came to do this, but I for each of the films, I don't know why, but I listed a few notable pieces of information. So I've got, the director, the screenwriter, any awards it might have won, particularly Oscars, and the release date, cinematography, because I know that's something that we both have always appreciated in film.
Yep.
And the box office, I thought, might be an interesting piece of information. So
you actually worked on this.
I did, and I'll tell you, I went one step further, which I think you'll appreciate. I even identified 5 criteria for myself to help me sort of, solidify my list. And I can tell you what those 5 things are right now, if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm curious.
So this was my criteria. So number 1, rewatchability. Is this a film that I can watch over and over and over again with no problem?
Yeah, that's something I would agree with my list.
And the next one was harder to define, but I put it down as impact, or I also wrote nostalgia. So basically, there's something about this particular film that very strongly resonates with me. Like it's representative of a specific time and place in my life.
Okay.
Directing, I think that you can agree with. Definitely. All right. I did put cinematography too, because I think, again, both of us have always, and frankly, I think I get that from you, is the look of a film.
Yeah, I would expand on that a bit, because this topic is something that's, it's a big thing to both of us, right? We both love movies.
No question.
But being critics, armchair critics at best, of movies came at a certain time, I think. Although it started when we were pretty young, you especially, because, there's a 9-year difference between us for the listeners out there that don't know. And so a lot of times, like, I would see movies that you weren't even allowed to see yet. You weren't old enough.
Right.
But I am curious, because I know, like, when I was in college and I started studying movies, and I don't know if you know this, but I used to write movie reviews.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, for Valencia.
Oh, I did not know that.
And I bet you could find them somewhere. However, they wouldn't be under my name, because I ghost writ.
So now was that a public? Now, of course, you're talking about Valencia College, where we both graduated from many years ago. Now, was that a particular publication that you remember the name of this publication you wrote for?
It was like the school newspaper.
Like the Valencia Voice, maybe?
Yeah. And I ghost wrote them for my ex-wife. And she got credit for it. So she was basically cheating.
Well, that sounds about right.
But that on top of, for some fluke reason, both at Valencia, and then we both went on to Rollins College and Winter Park. And for some reason, I had English teachers that loved to use movies and plays as a way of teaching grammar. Well, and that's the luck out.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because we both studied film in college. You a little bit more seriously than me because you ended up going the acting route for a while. But
right.
But it's funny because I think about the early days in school, and back then it was more about when there was a film being shown in class, it was a great opportunity to take a nap on your backpack. That was the level of interest I had at the time. But then, of course, at Valencia and then at Rollins, it was much more of a passion at that point where we were taking various courses in film.
Yeah, and how much of it was personal, how much was influence from teachers or each other. But it'd be interesting. We get into the list, and we'll talk about each one. And like you said, the influence behind it, where it came from. I think you'll see some things that we share.
So now the last two bits I'll mention, and then we get into the list here. Is the last criteria I had was acting. So kind of a segue into referencing your acting. And I added on to that. I expanded that to memorable performances, some standout moment in the film. That should be a given, I guess. And I'm
going to mention that.
Yeah. And I will admit that and you probably did this as well, but I have a number 6 that includes about 7 or 8 films that I just kept vacillating back and forth, and just they didn't make the cut. But as I look at them now, it's like trying to choose your favorite child. Although I'm not a particular fan of kids.
Yeah, we both have we both have twins, and you have
That's
3,
right,
of course. But
no, truthfully, we both despise children. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into the top 5 all-time films here.
Okay, and I'm going from I listed them 1 through 5.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't do that.
So yours is just any order.
Correct.
Okay.
But but that might be interesting to see. Maybe we can talk that out after we go through the list and see how
Okay.
how I might rank those.
Okay, because I'm gonna start with my number 5.
Okay.
Work up to my number 1.
Okay.
So
lay it on us.
Okay, you want me to go first?
Let's hear it.
So my number 5. Do you have a drum roll effect? No.
I did, but I how's this?
That's good. Perfect. My number 5, and this is a shocker. Not really, but it is. Roxanne.
Oh, Roxanne. Mr. Steve Martin. I like it.
Yes. And this is a film that would not be on any major critics list, right?
Right.
I think we can both agree to that because it's a comedy, and they hate comedies because they got to be snooty. But this is a brilliant adaptation of Cyrano de Bergerac.
That's right. Jose Ferrer.
exact. Well, it's funny you say Jose Ferrer. A lot of people have played Cyrano.
True.
We know Jose Ferrer and we know Gerard Depardieu.
That's right.
But the play goes back to 1897 is when this was actually written.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a play, obviously, by Rostand.
Uh-huh.
Edmund Rostand wrote
Right.
and it's very Shakespearean, right? And it even has a play within a play.
Mm-hmm.
And now both of us we're both big fans of Cyrano.
Yes.
This is one where I think I had influence over you. Yes, because I actually did talking about acting, I actually did a monologue from Cyrano to audition with. And I actually did it in front of one of my classes because you had to do something artistic. And I couldn't, people drew things and wrote poems. The only thing I could think of was doing a monologue. So I picked a very famous monologue from Cyrano where he is talking to her, Christine, which is, Christine's the name in Cyrano. And brilliantly, his name in the movie, Roxanne, is CD.
That's right.
His name's Charlie.
That's right.
His nickname is CD, of course, for Cyrano de Bergerac. And I'll just point out a couple of brilliant scenes. And have you read Cyrano?
I have not.
Okay, so if you read Cyrano, the Rostand version, it's very complex. It's like reading Shakespeare.
Yeah.
It's very hard to interpret. And sometimes it would take me reading a section 5 times before I understood what he was saying. So it's very Shakespearean written, and the brilliance of Steve Martin's writing is how he takes that, translate it, because it's not written in English. It's actually written in French.
Right.
And of course, Jose Ferrer did it in English, but we saw it done in France with Gerard Depardieu. Mm-hmm. We can watch that Gerard Depardieu version without subtitles. Without any kind of subtitles, and we know what he's saying.
Right.
Speaking French, but neither one of us understand a word of French.
I did not. Now, see, it's amazing because that did not, and it's one of my favorite films.
Right.
And that did not even register in my brain as I was going through, because I tried to just sort of from my own memory, and then, looking through my collection to just get kind of the juices flowing. But Roxanne just never even popped up. And now when you talk about watchability in my criteria, now that absolutely I could watch over and over again.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
And, the brilliant sections of it, there's a famous section that I love where Roxanne is telling Cyrano about how she's in love with this guy. Mm-hmm. And poor Cyrano thinks she's talking about him.
Right.
And she's talking about this other buddy of his, Christian, a new guy in town.
Right.
And Cyrano's like, oh, really? And she says, oh, he's so smart and so clever, and he's so handsome. And Steve Martin, the others who have played it, who played it? Kevin Kline did a version on Broadway with Jennifer Garner. So that's one of my favorites.
That's a good one. And Chris, of course, played by the great Rick Rossovich. He was very suited to that part, I thought. He did a great job. That's a great supporting cast too. Of course, you get the lovely Daryl Hannah, but also interestingly, may he rest in peace. The comic legend Fred Willard was actually in Roxanne as Mayor Deebs.
That's right.
Of course, we just lost Fred. All right. Well, I got to say, I did not expect to have the first one be so out of left field to me. So that's a good one. That's a good one.
So let's get to you.
This was a tough one. And this is where I think that all of these others that kind of didn't make the cut, I could slide any one of these others in here. But I have gone with, as I guess what would be if I were to rank these, I would say this probably is my number 5, to be honest with you. So now that I reveal it to you, you might find that a little shocking.
Okay.
But the number 5 is actually quite relevant because my number 5 is Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Right? So
that's another one that wouldn't be on anyone's list.
Right. And it's certainly indicative of a number of Academy Awards that it won, which was one for Best Sound Mixing.
Right. That's like throwing them a bone.
Exactly. And that was released, what is it, almost 40 years ago, May 17th, 1980. Right? We just surpassed the 40th anniversary, which is hard to believe. But this is one that for me, because look, I'd be remiss if I did not have a Star Wars film on my list. I just don't see how I could not have had one on there.
Right.
And Empire has always been my go-to film. Now, I'm an original trilogy guy, as are you. And I just, Empire Strikes Back, the whole Hoth landscape, I Love You, I Know scene with Han and Leia is so iconic. And
right, where she tells him she loves him and he can't say it.
That's right. And that was actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was an ad lib by Harrison Ford.
I read that.
Yes. Yeah. And so, of course, directed by the great Irvin Kershner, and Lawrence Kasdan did the screenplay, who did Force Awakens with his son, right? Didn't they?
He did when they came back after all these years.
Right.
But it's interesting you say that because right away people think, oh, yeah, George Lucas directed that. And
that's right.
But people assume he did because it was his creation.
That's right. That's a good point. But, look, this was at a time when I was 8 years old. And the action figures, I was so into that at that time. And there was something about
this was
look,
1980?
1980. And just something about the look of that particular film. Now, I can't say, I'm pretty sure I never saw the original in the theater. I think the first Star Wars film I saw in the theater was Return of the Jedi. I do not think I even saw Empire in the theater. I think I saw that on TV. But it just had such a profound impact on me. There was something about, and of course, the Luke, I'm your father revelation. I mean, it was pivotal. It was pivotal in the saga at that point, This
was a movie that was one of those that people always said, don't ruin the ending.
Right.
We hear that a lot now. But Empire was a movie that was such a shocking ending when he says that. And, if you had known it going in, it's kind of a bummer. Because, it kind of comes out of left field. Also, it's a great example of a rare thing where, and I think we agree, most people I think agree, maybe it's the best one, but it's definitely better than the first one. Yeah. So here's the sequel being better than the original.
Yeah, that whole Battle of Hoth with the AT-ATs and
Right.
it just, the again, when you talk about the look of a film, it just captivated me. Plus, there was probably something to the fact that growing up in New England as we did, the cold, harsh winters, and I think that was something that I could relate to, that kind of landscape,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's my number 5. But that was not an easy decision. And interestingly, that film had its premiere at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., if you can believe that.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you would think, like the original, it was, in Hollywood or whatever. But and that was actually a few days before the worldwide release.
Right.
On May 21st. So the May 17th release date was actually when it premiered, but that was in DC. So that was something I didn't know until I was, going back and looking up some information about it. All right. So moving on to your number 4. Let's hear it.
You'll instantly know the director, but you won't probably know the movie. This was directed by the famous Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And there's been a few of his movies that have come out in 4K recently, and they're just stunning.
But this you're going for a deep cut, it sounds like, though.
You're going for one that people probably don't even know, called The Killing. Just Killing.
The Killing. Okay.
And the reason, and I don't think you've seen this yet, have you?
I have not seen it. I've not seen it. I've got it up on the screen here for you, though.
Oh, great. Oh, there it is right there. And you see Sterling Hayden.
1956.
Was in another classic Kubrick film.
He was in another, Dr. Strangelove?
Yeah, that's it. Dr. Strangelove. I was thinking of the extended title, How I Learned to Stop Worrying About, the bomb, or whatever it is. And Sterling Hayden's brilliant in that. He's the one who basically, gives the command to set off the nuclear bomb in Dr. Strangelove. And he's whacked. He's a whacked out general. So I watched that. I saw him. I got to see what else this guy was in. And sure enough, he's in a lot of movies and a lot of good movies. And I love noir, film noir. And we'll get into that another time. I won't explain it now, but this is early Kubrick. I think it was 67, if I remember correctly.
Actually, it goes way back. It's 1956.
Oh, it was okay.
Yep.
And just to give you a quick synopsis of this, it was a couple of students wrote this for their thesis in college, and they were Russian. And the only reason I know that is because I saw this movie. I loved it so much. I looked it up, and sure enough, the Criterion Collection has it out in their library.
Okay.
The Criterion Collection, they take sometimes films people have, like this is a film when you see Stanley Kubrick, Lolita, all his films.
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, 2001, Full Metal Jacket, all of his movies, you always see a collection of the same 9 or 10, and people think that's all he directed was those, but he did some other films that people just never heard of. And Sterling Hayden he's carries this from beginning to end. But I wanted to go back to the French students, or the Russian students that wrote it. They wrote this as their thesis, and you can see it on the Criterion Collection, talking in Russian. And it's just brilliant stuff. It's just, you got to see this film.
Now, it's interesting because there's a note here, and of course I'm referencing Wikipedia for The Killing.
Yes.
which you can see. And there's an interesting note here that says Quentin Tarantino said that this film was actually a significant influence on his 1992 film Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, not surprised. And it's film noir. It's it's just a great cast.
Mm-hmm.
Not people that would know today, but there's a guy, Alicia Cook Jr. in it, who always plays kind of a wimpy guy, and it's kind of like a group of guys plan a heist.
Yeah.
And in Reservoir Dogs is a perfect example of, if you like that film, obviously it's not as violent, but for the day, it was very violent film.
This is great. I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to put this on my short list to watch. I've never heard of The Killing.
Yeah, and if you want to see it, I believe Amazon Prime shows it for free.
Oh wow, even better.
So check it out. It's a great film.
That's a good pick. There's a good pick. All right. So again, now mine are not ranked in order, right? So I'm just going to go to what was my number 2, which again, I find it interesting as I say that, because the number 2 is actually fairly significant in this title, which is, of course, the slightly well-acclaimed film called The Godfather Part 2.
Wow.
So now, of course...
Now, is this your number 4?
Well, again, I didn't rank them in that way.
Okay.
So, we can kind of go back and rework that, and I'll be happy to see if I can narrow that down. But, this would probably be at the top, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But this is difficult, right? Because, and you and I talked about this before we were going to do this particular podcast, which was if it was a trilogy or something. In fact, I think I was the one that put that out there, said, listen, you got to pick one. You can only pick one. So not an easy thing to do here, particularly because you and I are probably the 2 biggest fans of the 3rd installment of The Godfather.
I would say so.
And again, maybe that's another episode. We can break that one down in great detail.
That would be a whole episode to do, because people treat that like it's garbage.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
I mean, it's the butt of many jokes. I've seen The Simpsons rag on it with their Fat Tony character.
That's right. Fat
Somebody says, I haven't been this bad since Godfather 3. And it's like, whoa, that's going too far.
So 5 Oscar wins. Do you know which ones they were?
I know Al Pacino didn't win, but...
this is true.
Coppola, of course, won Best Director. Pacino was really such a standout, they gave it to Robert De Niro.
Yeah, now is this... is The Godfather Part 2 still the only sequel to have won Best Picture? Does that still hold true?
Yes.
It does. Wow. Okay. So Best Picture, we have Best Director, as you said, Bobby De Niro, Best Supporting Actor. Funny to lump him in the supporting actor category, but and Best Adapted Screenplay and Art Direction. Now, Pacino was nominated, of course, but did not take home the Golden Statue. And I don't know if you know this. Do you know who else was nominated in the Best Supporting Actor category? There were actually 2 other nominations.
I would think Tom Hagen.
No, you'd be wrong, actually.
No, he wasn't. I'm surprised.
No, there were two gentlemen. For supporting actor was Lee Strasberg, supporting actor.
Wow.
Which is crazy. And then, of course, Frankie Five Angels, Michael Gazzo.
No, I didn't know that. And what a brilliant performance.
And released in December 1974. Gordon Willis did the cinematography on that film. And in terms of the box office that it did, my sources that I looked up said about 48 million, both U.S. and 48 million worldwide. So about $88 million at the time, which, back then, I mean,
That's huge.
That's a pretty big chunk of change.
And I'm sure there's people that, would say, well, in today's dollars, that equates to, such and such.
Right. Now, I think...
By the way, I lied when I said there wasn't another sequel. There is one other sequel that won an Academy Award.
Okay.
But the difference is, and this is what I'm thinking, because both the original Godfather and the sequel both won the Academy Award. And Godfather 3, as much as people, hate it, it was nominated.
Right.
But the other film the other sequel that's won an Academy Award was The Lord of the Rings.
Oh.
Third movie.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Which was called Return of the King. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the first two did not win. They were both nominated.
Right.
So that's why. So Godfather's a little different because the original and the sequel, they're the only two, and that's what I was thinking.
And again, how do you narrow that trilogy down? And I do think we need to, for the benefit of the listeners, we're going to need to do a Godfather 3 episode.
I agree.
For sure, and try to maybe garner that some more respect that it rightly deserves. I mean, that's a film that the more I watch it, the more I love it. All right, so we're going to set up your number 3 now. Is that where we're headed?
Yep. This is the great Billy Wilder, and there's so many that could go here. But my favorite Billy Wilder is Double Indemnity.
Oh, yeah. That's not a surprise that you would have that on your list. That's always been one of your favorite films.
And again, rewatchability.
Yeah.
The thing about film noirs is they follow the same rhythm usually, and it starts out at the ending, and it's pretty typical. And usually, the guy who's like the hero, or whatever you want to call him, in a film noir is the guy who's guilty of whatever, because a film noir usually circles back, starts from the beginning, circles back, and then it ends at the same place. And this, of course, starts with Fred MacMurray, who people know as a Disney guy. I don't really know if you know that.
Yeah, well, that's what I would say, right?
Yeah, he was a big Disney guy. He did all the Disney movies. But before that, he was a very serious actor. But Billy Wilder, I mean, he's one of those guys I could plug in 5 different one of his films right here. Just one of my favorite writers.
Yeah.
Sunset Boulevard probably would be on most people's list as their favorite. The Lost Weekend he did.
Agreed.
Some Like It Hot.
Right, Some Like It Hot, of course.
The Apartment, 7 Year Itch. I mean, the list goes on and on with him.
Yeah.
But this is so good. And Edward G. Robinson.
I was just going to say, how do you let my people go now, she?
This was him at the end of his, he wasn't the lead actor in this. He was a relatively small part.
Right.
Well, I think it was big enough, but it was small considering Stanwyck was the leading actress and she had a big part. Of course, Fred MacMurray was all over it.
Right.
He told the story. He was the narrator. That's another thing. A good film noir has a narrator.
And it's usually from their standpoint, right?
Yes. And so that's one of those things. Oop, this is film noir. And they always talk like, hey, what's a dame like you doing in a place like this,
Right.
Let's move on to your number 3. I could go on for hours.
That's a great one. And I got to tell you, I haven't seen Double Indemnity probably since sometime in the early 90s when you first showed it to me. So I got to go back and give that another view.
Definitely dig it out because
for sure.
It's a great watch.
All right. So moving into my next here, my third. this is both controversial, perhaps to some, once I mention it, but no question it should be on this list. And it's the great film Braveheart.
Oh, wow.
Braveheart. I mean, say what you will about Mel Gibson. This is not a political podcast, so we're not going to go down the,
He's kind of redeemed himself.
Yeah, again, we can save that conversation for another day, but just one of my all-time, you talk about rewatchability. I probably saw this in the theater at least 11 times when it came out. It was released. You know what the release date on this one was?
God, it's got to be in the 80s, right?
1995, but the date was May 24th, which it is today.
Oh, that's funny.
So we are celebrating its anniversary today, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, and it's weird because this is a Memorial Day weekend, and we're in the middle of a pandemic that's killed 100,000 people.
That's right. Again, not a political podcast.
No, but just I think to point that out.
Set the scene.
A time in history of just terrible.
Well,
but anyways, go back to the movie.
When could you need films for escape more than we do now?
This is the perfect time.
Exactly. And so this film, it won 5 Oscars, right? Best Picture, Director, Cinematography, Sound Effects Editing, Best Makeup. And this is one, like Double Indemnity for you. I could go on and on for days about various moments in the film that are just amazing. That whole scene when that slow motion scene when he comes back into town after his wife, I guess we would say, is murdered.
Yes, his arms up in the air.
Yeah, just amazing. And the fact that he directed that is just is stupendous,
Yep.
And the look of that film is just remarkable. And of course, that's been in my collection for many, many years. But the soundtrack is amazing for that film as well. It's a great soundtrack.
It is. Do you know there's a new 4K transfer?
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to be picking that up.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I got to pick that up. But he could have done nothing else in his resume but Braveheart, and that would be enough. Just a fantastic film.
This, to me, when I think of Braveheart, I think of the colossal fight scene and how many extras they had. Not, fake ones, but real extras. Game of Thrones, I thought, had some of and this was for TV, it's very comparable to Braveheart. In those battle sequences where the guys are so close and they're just, it's so tight that people are getting killed because they're getting smothered. How do you film that? That's a great film.
All right, let's switch it back over to you, Smooth. What's your next on your list?
And I was going to cheat here, but I can't because of the rule we had. But I was going to go with the Godfather epic.
Yeah. All right. So you had to narrow it down.
I had to narrow it down. And for people who don't know, the Godfather epic was made for TV where they fused the first and the second movie, and they show it in sequence. Like you picked Godfather 2. One thing we didn't mention is how that changes, that goes back and forth in time. But if you didn't like that, you want to see it in its actual sequence, you can get the Godfather epic, although it's only on VHS. And it shows the movie starting from the beginning with Marlon Brando and goes to the end with Michael, killing Fredo. But I went the other direction. I picked number 1. And it's so tough, but I just love the arc of Al Pacino in number 1, where he's kind of this college kid and or expected to be a college kid. And then he goes into the army and disappoints everybody, but ultimately comes out the other end as the head of the family.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that arc because you're right. It was fully formed in the sequels. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't argue with that. That's a great point.
And the fact that Marlon Brando was so brilliant in it, both of those films are, I'm sure you could flip a coin.
I'm not as big a fan of the flashback, parallel storyline, the B story, if you will,
Right.
of the sequel. I'm not, I'm not as big a fan there. I mean, there's many moments I like. For me, it's all about Pacino. So you're right. It could go either way with that. Finish listening to this episode and then go pop that in because it's spectacular.
If you haven't seen it, go get it. Watch it from start to finish and then watch it again.
All right, moving on to the next one. So my number 4 on my list, and there's no doubt that you'll respect this choice, whether or not it's on your list, which makes me think of your choice for Roxanne in some ways, I guess. But it's the great film director Harold Ramis, and of course, I'm talking about Groundhog Day.
Oh, I love Groundhog Day.
Well, this film, it's. I think, a lot of people, and this is a film that people either love it or they hate it. I don't know about you, but when I talk to people and I bring that up, they either just don't get it or they're huge cult fans of it. It goes either way. There's no middle ground, it seems like. But I love it. We saw this in the theater, I recall.
Yes.
This was somewhere here in Florida. We saw that, maybe at the old Promenade or whatever.
Yeah.
But, of course, not an Oscar-winning film, but it does, the tone of the film, Bill Murray, of course, one of the great comic, actors and performers of our time. The arc of that film in terms of it's a comedy, it's a romance, it's a drama. It like hits all of those points for me emotionally when I watch it. And of course, I was already in love with her, but the wonderful, beautiful Andie MacDowell. I mean, she was just an amazing co-star in that film. So Groundhog Day, February 12th, 1993, release date.
I've heard Harold Ramis talk about that. And he talks about looking through the lens and watching Andie MacDowell and just like forgetting to say cut because he's just staring at her. And I'm not surprised. There's also, I don't know if you know this, but this killed the friendship between Harold Ramis and Bill Murray.
Yeah, I think I might have been aware of that.
They never really spoke to each other because Bill Murray wanted the movie to be more serious.
Yeah.
And, Harold Ramis felt he was making a comedy. And at one point, Bill Murray would show up late or not show up. And finally, Harold Ramis had to, take off the kid gloves and be the big guy and really come down on Murray. And they never even made up. Now, of course, Bill Murray speaks of him fondly because he's gone. But
yeah, now I seem to recall, though, Murray, I feel as though he has said that they, maybe it wasn't a complete reconciliation, but I feel as though they were able to, get on a better path before Ramis passed away. Maybe I have that wrong, but I thought that was the case. But yeah, so Groundhog Day, I think, again, you can respect that choice.
I love that choice. And again, this is like our favorite films. This should have won awards. I mean, the fact that they let this one go without giving it any big awards is really sad.
It's funny, too, because Patton Oswalt, of course, who the comedian Patton Oswalt, he was just recently on one of the late night shows, and he said how this is a perfect film to be watching in the current times with this COVID-19 situation, right? Because every day feels like it's the same day.
That's true. That's good observation.
Absolutely.
And the way he starts, Harold Ramis starts, because think of it, it's a complex idea. How do you film this? Right away, we figure out what he's doing. Bill Murray kills himself like different times, and just a fantastically directed movie. Another movie I could watch 100 times.
So let's move away from Gobbler's Knob, and let's move into your, I think, next and final pick.
Yeah, last pick, number one, and maybe your number one. I don't know.
I think I can almost guarantee you we're not going to have the same number one.
Okay.
Yeah.
You probably can guess mine. I bet you could guess mine, right?
I don't know, because the thing that would get me with you is the period of time. In other words, you have a much deeper catalog of the older films. But you know what? Now that I'm saying that,
yeah,
I absolutely do know what it is. Now, I will say it's not on my list.
Right.
Do you want me to reveal it for the listeners?
Yeah. Right.
It's absolutely, undoubtedly got to be the fantastic Orson Welles epic Citizen Kane.
You got it.
Bang.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know me too good. And of course, a lot of people will say this is the best movie. So it's not like I went out on a big limb for my number one.
But educate for those that again, if there's anybody listening that has not seen this film, shame on you, first of all. But educate us a little bit about the film.
It's basically it's loosely based on a real guy, a publisher. First of all, Orson Welles directed this when he was in his mid-20s. It's brilliant. I mean, absolutely, from start to finish, the best directed film ever. And
revolutionary in filmmaking at that time.
Absolutely. So many things that are followed today by directors, they'll cite back and say, that was a nod to Citizen Kane, or I learned that Citizen Kane. And of course, Orson Welles' sidekick, Joseph Cotten, is in it. There's, all these films we're listing are films of people. If you haven't seen any of the ones we've talked about, you should definitely make a list, especially, as you said, given the time, given people looking for entertainment.
Right.
Here you go. This is a great example. And this brings us to the last and final film of our list.
Well, and we've just given, once we complete this, we will have given our listeners a solid list of 10 films.
Yeah.
They can, go back and enjoy either rewatching, or if some of these are new, then, hey, all the better.
All 9 films that we've talked about so far are just must-see films.
Absolutely agree.
Even if you don't want to watch them, like, Citizen Kane, I love it for some of its technical prowess and some of the shots. You don't have to watch the movie for that stuff, or say, this is great directing, or look at the way they filmed this. No, it's just, these are great, enjoyable films. You don't have to be a film critic or snooty or whatever. These are all just fun movies.
All right, so I've got the distinct honor of bringing up our last film for discussion.
I'm really curious.
Yeah, this is you wouldn't guess this one, but I'll give you the opportunity to guess if you want.
I thought you might have Citizen Kane in there, but now seeing your list, I can see the path you took. So I don't know. I'm really curious.
Now, and again, there's, and if we have time, we can talk about some of the scraps, what's on the cutting room floor, as they say.
Yes.
But this film, I remember seeing it in the theater when it came out. I was here in Florida still at the time. It hits every single one of my criteria of rewatchability and,
Right.
the impact, directing, all those things. And you'll appreciate the director. The director is okay. So let me tease you just a bit.
Yes.
All right. So the director is Gus Van Sant.
Ooh, I think
So-
I.
See, now you think you got it. So you want to try a guess?
Yeah, I'll take a shot because I think it's one of my favorites too, which would be Drugstore Cowboy.
And you would be absolutely incorrect.
Wow.
My good brother. Yeah. So, but I went with Good Will Hunting.
Oh, wow.
So, lot we can say about this film. Of course, the fact that Affleck and Damon and that whole situation with the screenplay, and of course they won for best screenplay that year. Robin Williams for best supporting actor. I mean,
Brilliant.
We very relatable to us in the sense that it was filmed in Boston, so
Yep.
of course we're from there, but it's just the film that spoke to me right out of the gate. I mean, the arc of the character for Matt Damon in particular, his character is just something to behold, and he could have easily. Now I don't know if he was nominated. I don't know if you recall that. I'd have to look that up. But I mean, I think he certainly could have been.
If let's put it this way, if that movie was made, today,
Yeah.
he'd have won.
Actually, he was nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah.
He was, yeah.
But if because he was an unknown, who are these two kids from Boston? We're not going to give him an Academy Award his first time out. That was a movie that had a very low budget, less than 10 million, something like that. Made 10 times what it was. A lot of it was shot, like you said, in South Boston.
Here's something that you'll appreciate, which is the music. Of course, the score was done. Do you know who that was?
Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman. There you go.
Who does a lot of, did Batman, does a lot of superhero stuff.
That's right.
With a band called Oingo Boingo.
That's right. Oingo Boingo. Now we're going back.
He also wrote the Simpsons theme.
That's right. So I don't where that would end up if I reorganize these, I don't know. But coming in as my final pick is Good Will Hunting. So
I have not watched in a long time, and I have a special edition DVD of that, or Blu-ray. I don't think it's out on 4K.
So there you have it.
Great pick.
Top 5 all time, and a very respectable list of 10, quite frankly.
Yep.
So
10 solid movies, rewatchable. If you're, we haven't talked about this, but we should mention our collections, because to show what kind of movie lovers we are. And me, I think, to anyone that lives with me chagrin, I take up at least one room in movies. I have over 2,000 movies now in my collection. I have over 500 digital movies, and I don't even really use that format.
That's a hefty number. I don't have anywhere near that, but I'm very selective, and as you know, moving into exclusive digital. There's of course an episode we'll have to get into our digital versus physical copies. That ought to be interesting back and forth.
Right, and the different media. I mean,
yes,
started on Laserdisc.
And so we can take it all the way back to, we could probably take it back to reel, but we could certainly start back at Beta.
Beta would be the first format.
Yeah, Betamax. Well, listen, I've learned a few things, I have to say, from hearing your list, and
Same here.
Very solid, and hope those of you listening have learned a few things as well, and that we've given you some solid recommendations for some viewing. And we hope that you will join us on our next episode of the Oh Brother podcast.
We were way too agreeable, don't you think?
Yeah, that's you're right. For sort of first out of the gate, they're but in time, as they continue to hopefully come back and listen, they're going to quickly discover that we definitely have plenty of opposing viewpoints on films. Well, we've been your hosts, Dan and Mike Smith, and this has been the Oh Brother podcast. We'll see you again soon.